Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this Blitz chess postmortem, a postmortem of my Blitz game number 431. I kicked off with c4 here. I wanted to play the English opening. My opponent played e6, one of the respectable replies. Knight f6, the most common. e5, going for a reverse Sicilian setup. e6 and c5, all decent ways to play. So I go with g3. d4 would just transpose into a Queen's Gambit decline type of setup, or perhaps even a Nimzo Indian. Knight c3, another logical way to continue with English setups, or g3. These are equally good. And now my opponent plays a very rare move, bishop e7, and we are already out of the opening book. But this is not a bad move. He can still continue with d5. But he makes a few kind of silly moves in the opening here, starting with this one, d6. I mean, there's no reason to go for such a quiet setup in the opening when he can easily claim some space in the center and get an advantage. By playing these laid-back moves, I mean, the advantage of them is that he can crank them out quickly. So it's often a strategy you see in Blitz where someone will play a bunch of very passive-looking moves with their pawns, but they can play them quickly, and they get a position which they hope to be able to play. But well, it's just not a good position. No good position will result from these moves. So e4, c6. He probably, what could he have played there? c5 or e5 would still be good. But he keeps with this strategy of just putting his pawns on the third row here. So knight c3. I'm continuing. I'm planning to play the Botvinnik setup with the knight here, pawn here, and then castle queenside. Kingside. That would complete the Botvinnik setup. And he doesn't do anything about it at this point, so I get onto it. And now he actually plays an interesting move here, d5. Challenges the setup, but actually at this point, this move is a mistake. It's a mistake for two reasons. One is just in general, it's a mistake to open up the position when you're behind in development. He's only got one piece developed, and he's not anywhere close to castling. I've got three pieces out, and I can castle in one move. So it's just a mistake, and it's also a mistake because it loses a pawn. So it's a double mistake. So I just take the pawn. He takes, cancel that. He took with the c-pawn. That doesn't really matter. I take back. He takes, and then I grab the pawn. So I'm a pawn up. I have active pieces, and should be no problem this game. And plays bishop e6. At least he's developing a piece actively, but I can harass his bishop with knight to f4. And the bishop doesn't have any move. Actually, even the chess engine finds bishop to c8 as one of the top choices there, so kind of interesting. Anyway, I go ahead and castle. I'm just going to play normally, just get all my pieces out, and then I should have an overwhelming advantage. I don't need to immediately strike. So g5, kicking my knight, but the knight has a good square to go to, so this is just another it's a move that creates weaknesses and doesn't have any corresponding benefits. A lot of times when you see these flank pawn moves, particularly when they hit a piece, the idea is to gain a little space and also to push the pieces back. But since I have a perfectly good square to go to, it's not really helping. Anyway, bishop to d6 was played here, and I played d4, getting my pawn in the center and then opening up a diagonal for the bishop, putting a little pressure on this pawn, although it's defended at the moment. Knight to c6, finally developing another piece. Bishop to e3, defending my center. h6, supporting his pawn structure over here on the king side. Queen to d2, just getting the queen off the back rank and preparing to connect rooks. Bishop to e6, hitting my knight again. And now I play the knight back to c3. Yeah, I was wondering about that. I could have played the other knight to c3 and just defended the pawn there. Defended the knight, I mean, on d5, and that's probably a more active way to play. If he trades, then it just brings another one of my pieces forward. So that would be fine as well. But anyway, I retreated the knight to c3, and that conceals the threat, which is just to push the pawn forward. It's sometimes easy to miss these kind of threats. If my previous move had been to, say, play pawn to d4, then he might be on the lookout for pawn to d5. But since my previous move was just this retreating move with the knight, he may not be realizing that one of the ideas is that it's opening up a square for the pawn push. And in fact, he ignores the threat and plays rook b8. So with d5, I gain a piece. He plays knight e5, But he doesn't have any move that really saves the piece. There's no way that he can move a piece with tempo. So I get the bishop, and this should be a pretty easy win. I think I will go forward and fairly rapidly here. There's just a pretty logical development. My only strategy here is just to trade things off and go to an endgame where I'm a piece up, and the extra piece will allow me to win some pawns and then win the game. And I just have to be sure I don't trade off my pawns. So I need to have pawns left at the end in order to make a queen if I'm going to follow that simple strategy of trading. And it's just an easier way to win than getting into anything really complicated. So I start trading some pieces off, and he goes for it. He actually trades queens here. And yeah, I'm just a pawn up. I'm just a piece up, and the pawns are even. Although my pawns did get somewhat mangled by that transaction, but it's still just winning for me. So now I want to trade rooks if I can, but first, he left his pawn undefended. I guess he didn't have a particularly good way to defend that pawn. It can't come forward because I can just take it. So black is going for counterplay with these pawns, but there's just no way he can break through. So I brought my rook back. I didn't want it. It was a little bit exposed on the e6 square, and just defending the second rank here. So g3, he pushes on. We trade off these pawns, but that still leaves me with two passed pawns over here on the king side. So I'm feeling pretty good. I won a pawn. He gave a pawn away when he tried to push forward and open things up. And now he plays rook to h6, so he's going to double on the h-file, but I have the h-file pretty well covered between the bishop and the king. He can potentially go to h7, I guess, after doubling rooks. But the other thing this rook h6 move did is it left his rook on the back rank under defended, so effectively the knight on e7 there is pinned. So I play knight d5 to take advantage of that. And he can't actually defend the knight. There's no good move here. He just drops his rook back, so at least his knight is free to move. But now I can go ahead and take the knight. So now I'm two pieces up. And let's see, he moves his rook out of the way. He's trying to avoid exchanges, but I start delivering some checks to the king. And right here I have a forced mate. So this was kind of an interesting moment. I could have ended the game pretty quickly here if I had calculated the mate, and I probably had enough time to do it. I was just sort of playing checks and hoping something would turn up. But this is a point in time at which you should stop and try and calculate everything out to the mate. So I'm covering all of these squares with my rook. His king can run away to some of these squares. But basically the rook is going to keep the king in the box, and between this rook, the bishop, and the knight, there should be a checkmate here. It just stands to reason. And you can see the chess engine is telling the way forward. If you want to pause and try and figure it out for yourself, it's an interesting calculation exercise to try and find the mate in 3. I'm going to go ahead and play the moves here. The engine is recommending knight f5 check. So that keeps the king in the box, forces it off of the dark squares and onto a light square. And notice this neat mate in 1 here. If the king goes to f8, then this move here is checkmate. The other rook on the back rank is covering the escape on the e-file. This covers the f-file, and the bishop and the knight cover those 2 squares. So a complete mate. So he can't go to f8. Let's see, if he goes over here to h7, then rook to h6 is mate, and supported by the knight. That's a cute mate. The knight is guarding that square, and the bishop is guarding that square, so there's no escape. So that's that square, that's that square. So that only leaves these 2 squares, either g8 or f7, which put it in line for a discovered check from the bishop. So, for example, say king to f7, then you have the rook here. A nice shielding maneuver. The rook shields the bishop from this rook, and so this discovered check is effective. And wherever the king goes, it's going to be... Oh, that's right, he can't go. The king can't go here. So the king only has 1 move. That diagonal is covered, only king to f8, and now we have this same checkmate again. So that's how I could have finished the game very quickly with just that move, knight to f5. I didn't find that move. I played rook g6 check immediately, thinking I was winning. But now he can wriggle around and escape. Knight f5 check still mates. Let's see. So what point did I let him escape? Right here. Well, he starts sacrificing material, and so at this point I'm a rook and a knight up. So there's no doubt about the outcome. It's just that this wasn't the quickest way to win. Even here, there's a mate in 5. Somehow the game went on for quite a long time. He played b5. Okay, I started wasting some moves over here on the king side. I should push. I started wasting moves on the king side. I played b4, and what I should do is push on with g4, bring one more pawn into the game, and then win that way. So I won in a very slow and inelegant fashion, but well, I eventually got the job done. So there was no real doubt about how the game was going to end, and eventually I mated with the queen and the rook, and so that's how the game ended. A lot longer than it really should have taken, but anyway, that's an example of how to play against incorrect play from your opponent. You make those threats, and if they're moving super quick, they're not even going to see the threats. And I think that's what was going on in this game. My opponent was just moving too fast until the game was already lost. And then once you have a winning advantage like you're a piece up, you just avoid, watch out for tricks. Make sure you don't get baited yourself, and then just trade down to an endgame where you're a piece up, and make sure you have some pawns left so you can create a queen. And it's a simple formula for winning. Okay, hope you guys enjoyed it. Leave any comments you have in the section below, and I will see you again soon. Bye.